Hey, howdy, and welcome to the Big and Bright podcast. This is James. That's it. Nick's not here because he decided to go vacation instead of care about the show. But don't worry, he is speaking from not even being here. He gave me a letter that apparently I cannot open until the recording. So let's see what Nick says before I get started. I am sorry that y'all have to listen to only James in this episode. As the greatest member of the podcast, I know it pains y'all to not see me. Nick is a king and always correct. James is a blowhard and a big dummy. Just kidding. Don't worry about that last part. It's not important. Anyways, it's just me. And today we are going to talk about only two subjects because not a lot's happening in Texas because right now there's quite a bit of senators and representatives that are calling for a fourth special session. We'll see if that happens. Maybe. But what we're talking about today is only be two things, like I said. Matthew McConaughey and George Floyd. Don't worry. I'll tell you how they actually go back to Texas. Actually, a side note that happened this week, which isn't really Texas, but still kind of cool because Nick and I have kind of talked about it so many times. The Mississippi State case actually was heard in front of the Supreme Court this week. That's the one that limits from 16 to 15 weeks for abortion. Staunch pro-baby murderers were, of course, all about it, having their epiphanies about how it's actually a huge thing for women to have this. We all know it's not really. But anyways, you're going to hear more of that, I'm sure, because the Supreme Court's going to take some time to decide. They still haven't decided Texas's case, by the way, if you're still wondering. So, until then, it's just sitting there as being argued. That's it. And if you're hoping that Roe v. Wade will actually be overturned, I'm glad you're optimistic. I'm not, because the court is still under Chief Justice Roberts, which we both know is not a real conservative. Now, back to the show. Matthew McConaughey. He said he's not running for governor. What are we going to do? I'm sorry, ladies. This beautiful man will remain on the big screen and not on the Texas big stage. He released it on Twitter, because everybody releases a video on Twitter to say anything these days. A lengthy 3-minute video saying such messages such as, "We lead through our service and trust each other first instead of last." I don't understand why he's not running with firm stances like this. This guy is my guy. But I digress. He did say, like I said in his 3-minute video, that he's not a politician, he's not running, he's just going to live and let leaders be leaders. Again, a lot of great platitudes, which to me sound like a great politician. So despite he's saying he's not entering politics, he's off to a great start to being a politician. He took 3 minutes to say, no. To me, that's awesome. I cannot wait to hear his yes, because it is probably far longer and a lot more platitude. But I don't blame him, because as we all know, this is a very trying time, and it's very fun for anyone who wants to be in politics, especially if you want to decide to put an R next to your name, which I'm sure he's not going to, but just in case, you never know. But as divided as we are, why would you risk your acting career to actually go to a lower paying job? I mean, come on, dude's making a lot of money. I wouldn't give that up if I was him. I'd just say it's all right, and keep on making that money. And since he was also being Texas, you can't really be a hardcore Democrat, and so Hollywood probably wouldn't like that. So the woke would be mad at him. He wouldn't get any more movies, and so by the time he'd leave office, if he ever made it to office, and go back to Hollywood, they'd say, "Oh no, spot's full. Somehow we just didn't really need you this time." That's how it'd work. So because he's not going to have to trope the Bernie line, he's going to stay out of it, because anything that's not Bernie, as we all know, has made you a Trumpster. So just stay out of it. Keep doing your movies. Keep looking sexy. That's what you do, man. Now, number 2. This is a very big subject, according to Texas Tribune, because they keep posting about it over and over and over. George Floyd. Now you may be asking, what in the world do we have to worry about George Floyd in Texas? It didn't happen in Texas. You're correct. It happened in Minnesota. But in case you don't know what's going on with what went on with him, here's a brief. A court determined that the killing of George Floyd was actually a murder, and a police officer murdered him in May of 2020 last year, which Abbott said was a senseless killing and reprehensible. This caused many protests, which were totally peaceful, definitely didn't have fires going on everywhere. And that's it. Never caught up. That's basically what happened. So, coming back to Texas, why would I talk about this? Well, this case may be settled, and from the video, you can agree, disagree, but a court of law found the man guilty, so you have to go with it until you can see otherwise. That is the ruling. But the woke can't leave it alone. No, they can't. This leads me again to the article, to Texas Tribune, about a pardon for George Floyd. They cannot stop posting this day after day. I actually told Nick this. I said, look at this. He's like, I'm tired of you sending me screenshots. Just stop. And I was like, but dude, they want you to see this article so bad. So I was like, all right, guess what? That's what I'm going to report on. This is fantastic. Now, anyways, to the pardon. Some from the left are actually mad at Governor Abbott because it's the day that ends in Y. Because he has not granted a pardon to George Floyd posthumously from a 2004 drug conviction in Houston, which was recommended in October of this year by the Houston Parole Board. Side note, if you're not sure how someone actually gets pardoned in Texas, a governor can grant a clemency, which is another way to say pardon, but has some limits. According to the Texas Board of Pardons and Paroles, a governor can do so only when there is a written recommendation of the majority of the Texas Board of Pardons and Paroles, or the board. And for here, Houston unanimously voted this in, so you get the majority. So, what had happened was, here's how he got arrested in 2004. He was arrested for cocaine trafficking by an officer named Gerald Goins in Houston in an undercover sting. Now we'll get to the undercover sting part a little bit later, but just remember, undercover sting. But since 2019, some stuff has come about. Gerald Goins, the former officer, has been accused of repeatedly lying or making up confidential informants to bolster his word against the defendants. It's called fraud, another way. So yeah. Texas is currently reviewing over 1,400 cases, which he is the ID'd as the arresting officer, or he was included in somehow, form or fashion with the arrest. That's according to ABC News. Now, currently, there's only 4 drug convictions that have been overturned. Because of this, that's why Houston Parole Board has actually unanimously voted to recommend his posthumous pardon. But there's no way this is political, right? Because they could have done this a long time ago, but they waited until now. Okay. Now, Allison Mathis, which is a Houston public defender, has requested that, of course, Abbott clear Floyd of this conviction, and she has a few reasons. And I'll just give you a few, then I'll go over them. Because it was less than 0.5 grams of crack cocaine. It states that the facts that it was a secretive operation because it was done in an undercover sting. Okay, let's just go over those 2 right there. Less than 0.5 gram of crack cocaine. Do you know what that is? Cocaine. Yeah, still cocaine. Yeah, it's still cocaine. You can limit it all you want to. Still cocaine. Next. She's mad it was secretive. I don't know if you know this, but sometimes when cops are trying to find drug trafficking, they don't outright say, hey, I'm a cop, sell some drugs. They kind of go undercover to give them the drugs or give them the money. Once we have that, we have drug trafficking. That's how it works. So, yeah, she's full of crap, but as we all know, most of them are. But again, she's a lawyer. That's what her job's supposed to do. Now, according to CNN, the Goins attorney, which is Nicole DeBoard, sweet name, says, "We stand by the original case. We certainly sympathize with Mr. Floyd's cause, but that doesn't change the fact that his former conviction was a legitimate one." Now, you may be asking, but James, they're looking into these. They're going to overturn it, right? Well, speculative, because they haven't overturned a thing yet. Even the Tribune article has to admit that Texas has only granted this type of pardon posthumously, person's dead, and then they do it twice, both of them under Rick Perry. But both were investigated and found to be actual wrongful convictions. The first one by DNA, because we had it and he found it a year after the person was, I think he just died. I wasn't sure. I don't know if he was killed. Either way, he was still pardoned later on. And then actual proof through a great thing called the Innocence Project. Side note, Innocence Project is really, really cool. It's a lot of great volunteers that help people who have been wrongfully convicted, and they do a lot of hard work that gets people out of jail, because most of them are done by law school students or volunteers who just really care about this project. I had a friend who did it. He actually really loved it. It's really cool. If you want a chance to look into it, go for it. But that's not the case here. There may be credibility issues, and one could lead to believe that this was wrongful. But besides actual facts, it's still a legitimate conviction. Sorry. It's how it works. I know that the woke want to have some magic Jesus, but we can't. He did it. It is what it is. This man didn't have a great past. Does not mean he deserved to actually be murdered by a police officer. I don't want that to be the case, or don't want that to be the takeaway. But it certainly means he did it. Sorry. Now, Ben Crump, which is actually the attorney for the Floyd family, he's urged Abbott to grant the full pardon and justified it by saying this crime helped unravel his life. Let me just go through his stint in Houston, because, again, dude has a colorful past. He pleaded guilty or no contest to 8 other crimes in Houston between 1997 and 2007. The biggest one, which was the last one, typically how it works, gave him a 5-year stint in the pen. So I don't think this small crime really was the thing that unraveled his life, because, like I said, it started in 1997. I just told you the crack cocaine crime happened in 2004. So the few years in between of him just deciding, this is what I'm going to do. All right, this is my life. So, no, not going to happen. I'm sorry, just not going to happen. Now, you may be asking yourself, well, James, the board approved it, and if they approved it, don't we always grant clemency or pardon? I'm glad you asked. I have the report from, this is according to, again, the Texas Department, the report from 2016 to 2020 for petitions for pardons or clemency for non-capital offenses. Now, I'm going to kind of go through some numbers here, so bear with me. 2016, 81 cases were recommended. 2017, 120 were recommended. 2018, 171 were recommended. 2019, 180 were recommended. And 2020, 110 were recommended. Now, this is a recommendation to the parole board, not to actually full clemency. Of those, we'll go back to the same years. For 2016, 29 the board approved. 2017, 16 the board approved. 2018, 21 the board approved. 2019, 38 the board approved. And in 2020, 53 were approved. They got kind of lenient in 2020 because it's 2020. So I don't blame them, but whatever. Now, how many has Abbott done in the past years he's actually been governor? 31. And don't worry, you'll have all of these sites. Now, he's been silent on this one despite it being available for 2 months. Well, it's pretty weird that you're mad that he's silent because he hasn't said anything. Maybe he's going to approve it. Maybe he's waiting. Maybe he's worried about this 4th session. I mean, you tell him to fix the dang grid all the time. Maybe he's looking into the grid. Or maybe he's just not worried about it because the man's already passed. He had his day in court and sadly had to be done after he passed away, or not passed away, murdered. But it's done. You can't undo it. And I don't know what this would mean for his family of just like, well, this one case is not there. Well, there's still 8 others, and that's just in Houston. So I don't know what you're trying to prove or trying to do, but you got to let it go. And I know that may seem callous. I know that may seem wrong. But that's just the simple fact of it. Like I said, there was only 31 that he's approved. Maybe this makes 32. Maybe not. But will it change George Floyd's life? Will it change the trajectory now? No. It was still an offense. He still was selling drugs. And just because the cop is being investigated at the time doesn't mean you should do it. I mean, you kind of did it. You put the cart before the horse. It's speculative. Four cases of the 1,400, which I just told you, are being looked at or have been reversed. There's still 1,400 more. Maybe they're all reversed. Maybe they're not. Sometimes a dirty cop just kind of does a handful, and the rest are shady, but certainly not wrongful. So until his is proved otherwise, I think Houston shouldn't have done it whatsoever. But Houston's blue, and that's what they do. So I'm sorry, friends. We're just not going to do that. And yeah. And again, I just want you to remind you just to kind of watch the Supreme Court, because Texas abortion case has been up there and it's been heard, and people are mad they haven't received a ruling yet. Well, guess Supreme Court does not work that fast. But Mississippi State's one is more important because it does have a chance to overrule Roe v. Wade. Will they? Justice Roberts probably won't let that happen, but I'm also a pessimist. I'd love to be wrong. I'm just not going to get my hopes up. And even if it is, just remember that's just a starting line. We can't let that be the finish line, because the end result should be no abortions. We should have babies. We should let these innocent lives live and not just get rid of them because a mother's life may be inconvenienced. Unless there's actually some kind of rape or health to the mother, I don't see a reason to actually get rid of a baby. But that's me. Maybe not you. Anyways, friends, this has been a Nickless episode, and I'm sure you're wondering, why would I have Nick back on here? Well, to be fair, I'm using his equipment, so you might want to actually be back on the show. Maybe. Anyways, friends, I just want to remind you that despite all this, the stars at night are big and bright. See you next time.